The title of this program is Asteroid Mining and Colonizing Space. Marc Perkel will be doing that. He asks, how practical is asteroid mining and how soon will it happen? It's actually beginning to happen this year, he'll tell us. You didn't hear that from me. Humanist Community member Marc Perkel will show a 30-minute video about Planetary Resources that explains asteroid mining in detail. He will also discuss the advantages of colonizing space itself rather than colonizing other planets and create a new vision for the future of humanity. So let's give Marc Perkel a big hand. And
thank you.
Thank you, Marc.
Okay. Yes, I'm going to play a 30-minute video. This video, when I first saw this about a year ago, basically completely changed my view of the future of humanity and asteroid mining, and it made things a whole lot more immediate. You know, I used to think some of this stuff was, yes, sometime in between 200 and 1,000 years from now, we're going to be doing this kind of stuff. But it turns out that we're going to be doing it this century, and the people who are doing it. In fact, there's a couple companies, Planetary Resources and Deep Space Industries, which one of the founders of Deep Space Industries is right here in the audience, you know, but I'm going to be talking about his competitor this time, but the concepts are still the same. Basically, Planetary Resources is a company started by Peter Diamasis and another guy whose name I forget. And this video is by Chris Lewicki, who's their chief scientist. And they basically stole a whole bunch of engineers from NASA, you know, to be the smart people to start this industry. And so this is a serious venture. It's got big money behind it, and this isn't just pie in the sky talk. These guys are actually going to do this thing, and they have a step-by-step plan on how it's going to happen. So, as you can see, and I don't know if this made as a big impression on you as it made on me, but it completely changed my vision of the future of humanity and space exploration. And one of the logical conclusions that I made from this, and watching a lot more videos, you know, than just this one, was that the paradigm of that we're all used to of going out and finding a planet like Mars or other Earth-type planets in around different stars, you know, which of course there's really none that are really quite like Earth anyhow, is a paradigm that's probably the wrong paradigm, and we're used to that because of Star Trek and science fiction, and we live on planets, so we just assume that that we're going to live on planets. But this idea of mining asteroids opens up the idea of building our own space colonies directly in space. So instead of being on a planet, we make our own planet essentially in space, you know. And of course these things probably wouldn't start out being the size of planets. They'll be smaller habitats that, you know, get bigger and bigger and more of them over time. And the advantage of that is that, you know, once you're in space, a planet is sort of like a pothole in the space-time continuum. You fight gravity to land on it, you got to fight gravity to take off from it, and there really isn't that much of an advantage to be on the surface of a ball. And so to us, you know, living in space and living on a spaceship is a little bit scary of an idea, except for the fact that this planet is a spaceship. This planet is just, it's the planet that we evolved on, but it's just an object in space, just like any other object in space. So we have a space-based spaceship habitat right now, and we just have one of them. And in the future, you know, we're going to have more of them. And the other advantage of building your own space-based habitats out of the material found in asteroids is that if we decide we want to go to the next closest star, which is Alpha Centauri 4.3 light years away, and suppose we look at it and there isn't any good planets there, you know, that we would like to inhabit, it doesn't matter. You know, we just send the robots out there, the robots build the habitats, And then once the habitats are built, we don't even have to haul the humans out there by that point. We could probably make the humans there, if we wanted to, out of DNA sequencing, and they would, after the robots would make the humans, and then the robots would raise the humans, and we would get the latest information from Earth, delayed by 4.3 years, and so these things can upgrade themselves, and if we wanted to put humans out there, we would have humans out there without having to haul them out there. So it just opens up all kinds of possibilities. And if you get on YouTube and Google and you look around, there's all kinds of interesting ideas for, various types of space stations that we might live on. Some of which have different orbiting things for gravity. A lot of things have, on the inside sort of look like Earth. And probably in reality, none of those designs are anywhere close to what it's really going to be like. It's sort of like Da Vinci's plans for flying machines. They had wings on them, but none of them would actually work. But we do this as a way of imagining the future, so that when we get out there, in my opinion, probably humans will, separate into two separate species, and eventually, within a fairly short period of time, my guess is that, nobody's going to be interested in creating artificial gravity anymore, and that we're going to learn how to live in zero-G and take advantage of a zero-gravity lifestyle and evolve, to be, zero-G spacefaring beings. And the concept of that is probably similar to what it would have been like if fish were intelligent, back 500 million years ago or so, and they were saying, maybe we ought to go out and colonize land. Oh no, that's too weird, I mean, in water we can go up and down and left and right, and we're used to water, and out on land it's a harsh environment, and we would be completely different, but yet, at some point, the first fish started pushing across the mud, to get from one drying up pond to another pond, and eventually, they evolved into us. And so, we're just, as humans, we're just one stage in the development of an evolution. This isn't the end of the evolutionary, the whole evolution. Previous evolution didn't exist just to evolve into us and that we stop at this level. We're a transition into something else, and that something else is going to be living in space, or maybe not. There's the question exists: are we going to do this or aren't we? And the answer to that question, there's two answers. One of the answers is yes, and the other answer is no. And if we don't do this, all life on Earth eventually perishes. And if we do this, then we continue to evolve, we live in space, we colonize the universe, and who knows what happens, but it doesn't end. And where this ties into humanism, since this is a humanist group, is that our vision of the future is about what's good for humanity. And it sets that vision itself sets creates a set of values, that we can put out there that humans should embrace, and that we need to, get planetary buy-in on those values, so that, the things that we as a species consider important, is to invest in technology, to invest in space, to invest in the evolution, to, look forward, to where humans are going and what decisions we have to make, in the next 100 years, as to what we're going to evolve into. So that way, when we get there and we look back at the decisions we made today, we can be confident that we, say, well, I'm glad we made the right decisions because we thought it through and we had a set of values that guided us in the right direction. And I think that, if anybody asks, well, what's the purpose of being a humanist and what's the meaning of life and what should we be doing, the videos like this show a vision into where we're going, and that we should embrace that vision, and that we should, essentially evangelize that vision, across the world, so that, we don't end up with, terrorist group like ISIS and Islam, the worst aspects of Islam, being the dominant factor, where people can't spend time looking through telescopes because they're afraid that their neighbor's going to come over and cut their heads off, something like that. So this type of, thinking is important, and and most of this is the work of a handful of people, and we need to encourage more people to be engineers and scientists and visionaries, so that there's more people who want to do this sort of thing. Okay, so it's 20 minutes we have here, and I wanted to leave time for lots of questions. So, I'm going to open it up and go for it.
Hi, Mark. Very interesting stuff. Can you explain, I didn't quite get what he was saying about water. Water isn't fuel, but it's propellant. Can you explain what the economic value of water is out there, since it doesn't really contain any useful energy?
Well, yeah, what you do is you separate water into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity that you would generate with solar panels. They would have to make solar panels in space, and the solar panels would turn it into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you have rocket fuel. And especially the connection, I think, between Planetary Resources and, say, Elon Musk going to Mars is very important, because if they're successful, they're going to make the job of Elon Musk going to Mars a whole lot easier, because he doesn't have to lift all the fuel and all the water up off the planet to get it there. He could build a much lighter spaceship, bring it up into low Earth orbit, then Planetary Resources comes along and fills it up with water and fills it up with rocket fuel, and then they go off to Mars at high speed because it's been refueled from stuff that's already in space. Next.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're a bro of Carl Sagan. So anyway, I have come up with a novel idea that I think, trying to get a hold of NASA, they have agreed or disagreed. And I finally got the attention of two astrophysicists, one in Kenyon College and one in Brown College in Rhode Island. I suggested that instead of controlling an asteroid that may collide with the Earth, and instead of a to-and-fro thrust, either slowing down or speeding up, you have a transverse thrust that either faces into the sun or outward.
Yeah. Well, with asteroids, to keep them from hitting the Earth, if you push them in any direction, they'll miss the Earth. Whether you push backwards, forward, sideways, any direction, they miss.
But the opward is efficiency. And one way of testing this is this professor, his name is Peter Swopes. I suggested that we go to a basketball court, and on a three-pointer where you actually have a basketball that's in orbit around the center of gravity of Earth, a parabola, that at the peak of the parabola, you either perturbate, a known perturbation, either to or fro or up and down, and that'll solve it right then and there. And this professor said, I want that idea to be a permission for me to use, and we'll find out soon. I also proposed that to Mythbusters, because they like to do arc things and perturbations and stuff, and so far I haven't heard from them. So everything, stay tuned.
Thank you. Next question.
First, I wanted to thank you for a choice of this talk and for this presentation. It's I believe it's very important, and like you said, if humans cannot survive, anything else, it just does not matter. And the only way to ensure that humans survive is by going to space, and I completely agree with this idea. So one question that I have is about gravity and zero gravity. So like you suggest that maybe humans can evolve in a different species adopted to zero gravity. Well, they might, but it may take maybe thousands of years and maybe We don't have thousands of years this time. Maybe we are more constrained in time for a number of reasons. But the alternative approach, and also we know that humans can live in zero gravity for some time, but it has a detrimental effect on humans' health, and most likely humans cannot have children in such conditions. It's still the open question. But also zero gravity is good for certain manufacturing processes, but it's not so good for others. And in particular, water production and water extraction, it's much easier to do when you have some gravity, when you can use convection and all this gravity-related processes. So the alternative approach would be to create the artificial gravity, but to use the asteroids and the materials mined from asteroids as just construction materials. So what do you think about this?
Well, his comment had to do with, gravity, and humans are used to gravity, and we're used to, we're physically created, evolved through, needing gravity, we're structured for gravity. We think about gravity. Our bodies are made for gravity, so in space we can create artificial gravity by having rotation, and at first we'll probably do some of that, and the question is well, will we keep doing that? So is there anything special about the amount of gravity that Earth has? Really nothing, other than that we're used to it. So once we're up there and we start making artificial gravity, it's like, well, where do we set the gravity at? Do we want it, 1 G, or maybe we want it half a G or a quarter G? If you have an old folks home and you have it at 1/4 G, and people who weigh 200 pounds would only weigh 50 pounds, it would be far easier for older people to get around, or for medical people to carry them around. And but my opinion, and this is only my opinion, is that once people are in space, that they are going to adapt far quicker than what any of us think, and they're going to be like, why do we want gravity anymore? I think 100 years, and also with a little bit of genetic engineering and stuff, that that gravity is something that they're probably going to say we don't need it. Now the problem with that is that 500 years from now, people who are born and raised in space may have a very hard time, or be impossible for them to come back to the Earth and live. It would probably be easier to go from having gravity to no gravity than to being raised with no gravity and then put into gravity. And that's where we're going to separate into two different species. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. There's a real good chance that I'm wrong. But, we'll just... But that's all we can do now. It's like the people who wrote the Bible, 2,500 years ago. They took a guess, and they got some things right, and they got some things wrong. And we're at the point where, at this stuff, a lot of it is just educated guesses, and I have my guess, and you have your guess, and we talk about it, but we all want to go up there and find out which guess turns out to be right. Next question.
Yeah, Jerry Grass. So they said there are about 50,000 asteroids they've seen so far, and I assume those are the larger ones, and I would guess that there would be hundreds of thousands of, maybe even millions of asteroids of smaller size going all the way down, even a foot or a few inches. I see two things about this. One is it might be a hazard to navigation, and then the question is how much of a hazard. And the other thing is, if you get some small asteroids that have the right stuff, well, maybe that makes the mining a little easier. You just bring those small asteroids back intact.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Actually, they're discovering 50,000 a year. There's not 50,000 total. They've actually discovered millions, and there's millions more to be discovered. As far as, bringing it back intact, different people have different opinions about that. And the people of Planetary Resources says, well, I guess it all depends on which asteroid and what it has and so forth. The robotics people think that, no, we don't need to bring it back. We mine it on site and we bring back the finished products, and because one of the side effects is that we're going to create space-based robotic manufacturing. That's one of the technologies that's going to be the technology of the 21st century. And if you have kids and grandchildren and you want them to get a good job making lots of money, you know, tell them robotic, space-based asteroid mining, you know, and robots in space. You know, if you're in robots in space, you know, 20 years from now, you're going to have a high-paying job. So anybody, you know, watching this on YouTube, you know, who's 10 years old and wonder, what am I going to be when I grow up? You know, robots in space. When I was a kid, I thought, you know, well, if I could learn how to fix a television set, I will always have a job. And for a long time, that was true. And so now it's robots in space. Next question.
What about the hazards of navigation?
Oh, hazard of navigation. These things are really far apart, you know. They're much farther apart than what they think. So, you know, yes, it would always be a hazard, but I think they're going to be able to deal with it somehow, and I can't tell you what the details are. But, you know, it's the same way that, you know, they fly space missions now, and they manage to avoid that stuff for the most part. And they'll just get better and better at it.
Okay, but now comes the hard part. You have to write an environmental impact report for all of this, because there's this little small matter of debris coming from the mining activity that can go absolutely anywhere. So, what's your comment on that?
I don't know enough details, you know, but when it comes to mining asteroids, there's lots and lots of space out there. You know, you can, I think that it's going to be cleaner because you're not dumping it into the same air that you're breathing. You're not, you know, burying it in the ground where your drinking water is. You know, if you want to throw something away, you just toss it into the sun and it's gone. I think that, that the pollution problems...
The asteroid itself. So if you have
Yeah, I think that there's so much room. People really don't appreciate how much room there is in space, and that I think that I don't see that as being a problem, polluting space. But if it is, they'll figure it out. I mean, in near Earth orbit, there's an issue with that because there's so much stuff that has been junk up there that they have to move the space station around to avoid that every now and then. That they basically track, you know, everything, you know, down to the size of a pebble that's floating around up there. And eventually they'll probably have robotic spacecraft that'll fly around and clean up space. You know, you can shoot that stuff down, you know, pretty easily if you have, you know, some technology that's just a little bit more advanced than we have today. Next question.
Our early industrials have exactly the same thought that we have experienced.
Every technological advance creates new technological problems. You know, before we had cars, we didn't have street lights, you know, so, or traffic lights, and before we had with traffic lights, we now have people running traffic lights. So, yeah, and every advance makes a problem. It's the good kind of problems to have. Next.
Of course, you and I are on really the same wavelength. When you think back at history and when we first discovered the New World, quote, we took wealth from the New World and brought it to the Old World, and we created wealth, a bigger wealth for the European population at the detriment of the New World population. In space, we don't have any political enemies up there. We don't have any ways to do things that are in granite that you can't change. Space to me is the lowest hanging fruit for humanity. It gives us so much wealth if we can exploit it, and it's almost
It's almost
it's no end to the
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you can have growth in space where we cannot have growth here on our own planet because we live here on a finite planet. So I'm looking, I think in 4 or 5 generations, there could be enough wealth on this planet for each individual, especially if we can get our population down to a supportable level on the planet, that everybody will be wealthy and maybe have that old communist idea where you can just go anywhere you want to on the planet. You don't work.
Well, you know, that's true. One of the things about the advancements in space and living in space and robotic manufacturing, where robots go out and build anything you want, and you have robotic farming communities that grow all the food that you can imagine, that literally it could get to the point where there's so much abundance that everything is free. You know, you have limitless space, you have limitless resources, and everybody is essentially rich and have to do very little to do it, you know, and that's the kind of future that we could have if we make the right decisions today and continue the direction that, you know, that Darwin is sending us in.
So anyway, I'm good, but I'm going to leave. You have the idea about putting all retirement homes in space.
Well, not all retirements. I'm just mentioning the advantage of low gravity in space. You know, that wouldn't that be nice if you were in a retirement home to have 1/4 gravity? You know, people who are walking around with walkers. You know, they could not only stand straight up, but you could strap a pair of wings on them, and they could fly to where they want to go, in 1/4 gravity or 1/10 gravity. I'm looking forward. You know, if I were retiring, and the other thing you mentioned about the cost of going to space is, you know, according to Elon Musk, you know, and he's been right all along so far, he thinks that he can get people to Mars for $500,000 a flight. And the idea is if you own your home here in California, you know, that you would sell off everything you have and that you would get, you know, you'd have your $500,000 because you can't take anything to Mars anyhow. And then you can go to Mars and live your rest of the life on Mars for $500,000. And if you don't like it there, he'll bring you back for free because the rockets have to come back anyhow, and they're going to come back pretty much empty of people, so you can change your mind and come back for free. And I think Elon's going to do it, you know, and maybe SpaceX is going to create the technology to, you know, provide resources to Elon Musk in space so that he can get fueled up, you know, on the way there, and that, you know, this is going to happen, And he's thinking that like 1 in 100,000 people will go to Mars, but that'll be enough, you know, to build a city on Mars of 70,000 people. And then if something bad happens here on Earth, like the Yellowstone caldera blows up and takes out, you know, the majority of civilization, that we have a backup, you know, on Mars, you know. So, you know, now where I see things differently than Elon is that, you know, he's still thinking in terms of colonizing planets, and I'm thinking in terms of colonizing space. But, you know, we certainly should have a colony on Mars. We certainly should have a colony on the moon, you know, mining hydrogen-3 for nuclear fusion reactors. And for the rest of it, we just build our own habitats, you know, any way we want. There's lots of good designs out there that are possibilities. Next question.
I have 2 comments and a question. First of all, I think that it seems in the short run, there's an advantage for people who are in spacecrafts right now to be able to get water from asteroids rather than water from the Earth. It seems like more efficient. I can understand it. And the other thing, then another comment, in the long run, if we have viable colonies in space, this is sort of a backup in case we go the way of the dinosaurs. That is, if some giant asteroid comes in and destroys us, we have colonies in space. Then a question I have is, I can understand getting water from asteroids to the spacecraft, but what about getting air, breathable air, to the spacecraft? Can you do that without, you know?
Oh yeah, well, when you separate water into hydrogen and oxygen, you just the oxygen is your breathable air. You know, you have the oxygen. And there's lots of nitrogen, and you know, there's carbon that you can make carbon dioxide. You know, so all the gases that are here on Earth are available in space. So yes, you know, we have the resources in space. For atmosphere, we got the structural materials, the iron, the nickel, the cobalt, pretty much everything on Earth, you know, that's not organic. You know, we're not going to find wood in space, for instance, but all the materials that are on Earth are available in space. And in some cases, a lot more abundant in space, because when the Earth was formed, all the good stuff sank down to the core. You know, where up in space, you know, the mixture is the same mixture as it was before the Earth was formed. Next question.
All right, it looks like lunch is almost ready. We're going to take one more, and I check.
If we go a little bit longer, it would be nice, because there's lots of people
I'll do
with
real
questions.
quick.
But go ahead.
So it looks like the argument on there that was interesting to me was the priceless one. Survival of the species seemed to be the priceless argument, right?
Yes.
And it looks like there's maybe three. This is avoiding planet killers, protecting the homeland. There's relocation, which gives us backup colonies on other places. And maybe there's mutation, where a new environment allows us to mutate into something different than ourselves. How are we deciding which DNA gets to relocate?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You mean which people get to relocate? Rich, healthy people get to relocate. The rich people always get it first. But the rich, successful, and that's one of the things too, is that it's not going to be, gang members who are moving out into space. This is something that's going to start with very sophisticated people moving out. So they're going to be starting a civilization with the cream of the crop of humanity. And just the people who want to go out there, there'll be, people from all races, but it'll be, the best of humanity moving out into space.
Okay, let's be quick on the Q and the A. Last question.
Hi. Although I love some of these ideas because they sound like really interesting and fun, I hate to say it, but it seems like a spinning out of the wildest fantasy of unlimited growth at a time when there are so many problems on our planet of destroying the environment that we live in, that this seems to me like a totally, undisciplined fantasy about not paying attention to the environmental destruction and the ecology of our species. And I just want to say one more thing. Humans and other life forms like us, very large ones, are far and away the smallest in weight and numbers of the biomass of the planet. Most of the biomass of the planet is bacterial or single-celled life forms. So, that's all I had to say.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to mention the environmental stuff. And the space is good for the environment, because this is already a spaceship that we're on and we have to take care of it, independent of that. But the thing is that if we don't go out into space, there's a 100% chance that 100% of all life on Earth will become extinct at some point. So, the Earth is going away. And the only way that we can save any life on Earth is to go out into space, so that when the sun consumes the Earth, that we're not on Earth when that happens. But the environmental problems with global warming, for instance, that space-based manufacturing may be the solution to that, because we need to put a thermostat on this planet to keep it stable. Now that we have an advanced society, and space-based mirror systems or other types of space-based technologies that control our environment on Earth is probably going to be the long-term solution to global warming issues, as well as getting off of carbon fuel and replacing it with solar and electric cars and all the good stuff that Elon Musk is doing.
All right, so that was our last question. Lunch is ready. There are lots more questions. Please join the speaker at the speaker table. Thank you, Mark.